Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are now. We've got a very special session and it's a video and it's from Erlingur Brynjulfsson, who's the co-founder and CTO of Controlant. And it's addressing one of the greatest logistical challenges of our time. And there's a great deal of focus on end-to-end product integrity, scale-up capability, reusable packaging and reverse logistics, as well as ultra-cold supply chain and required regulatory compliance, just to mention a few points. So I'm going to hand it over to Erlingur and I'll be speaking with you all afterwards.
So hi everyone. My name is Erlingur and I'm the Chief Technology Officer and one of the co-founders of Controlant. I want to thank you for joining this session. I'm excited to get the opportunity to share a little bit about our learnings and insights that we gained from working on COVID-19 pharma distribution and monitoring around that, and also share a little bit about how we see things evolve in the future in this regard. So last year, when COVID came, it became apparent how that could affect the world. We could see impact on people's health and lives were at stake. We could see impact on the global distribution network and logistics, with disruptions in logistics and production going down, etc. So it became very apparent how important it would be for the world to get vaccines as fast as possible. So the pharmaceutical companies went forward and went sort of into this rapid development of new vaccines for the disease. And we were approached by Pfizer, where they asked us to partner up with them to make sure and ensure safe delivery of their vaccines to the points of use throughout the world. And it became very clear early on that this would be a challenging task. First of all, it was a global pandemic. We were not looking at the individual regions where it was spread out through so many regions. So it was clear that distribution would need to extend to the entire world. These were high volumes, sending to tens of thousands of sites and hundreds of thousands of shipments. So a lot of volume, like this direct-to-patient or direct-to-use approach, through a rather complex distribution network. And it was also this fact that we needed to be monitoring in minus 80 degrees and all the vaccines need to be transported in minus 80 degrees that posed different challenges as well. And of course this all needed to be done keeping in mind and taking into account that this is pharma and all of the regulations and quality compliance that need to be taken into account for that. So in the beginning of the project, we sort of started with the end in mind, and started to define how success would look like. So we wanted to ensure end-to-end product integrity, make sure that all products were delivered safely. We need to make sure that deviations were surfaced and they would be taken care of by the relevant stakeholder. We needed to think about this in terms of how we could scale things up as the project went on and the complexity increased. So this all required us to think things from a scalability standpoint. We needed to have real-time flow of information. We needed to set up all sorts of rules around escalations and workflows to be able to scale this up to the degree needed. The supply chain never sleeps, so we needed to take care and think about 24/7 responsiveness, because it doesn't matter what time it is or what day, we always need to be able to respond. And last but not least, we set out to make sure that, like, from an economic and environment standpoint, we would be using a reusable approach for both boxes and devices. So the approach that we took was to focus a lot on collaboration. And when I talk about collaboration, I'm not referring to only the Controlant team and Pfizer teams and how they collaborated, but the stakeholders throughout the distribution network. We set out to map out workflows and figure out how we should set out escalation rules and how we could automate the communication processes to make sure that each and every stakeholder would get what they needed to solve issues that came up, and also to prepare, like destination sites, getting to know when a shipment was dispatched and also when it should be delivered, to give this predictability to the stakeholders in the logistics network. We needed to connect multiple systems. This is more than one control tower in a way, because the carriers have their own control towers and other stakeholders. So it's a way to sort of enable everyone to focus on their area of responsibility, and sort of how to integrate that together to get the constant flow of information throughout to the correct stakeholders. We needed to focus a lot on automation of the data gathering, not only from the device perspective, but also just from, for example, the carriers, getting the carrier milestones flowing into the system, so we can use that to make decisions, escalate and get the correct stakeholders to take actions. This needed to be also done relatively rapidly. We needed to sort of be quick to set things up, but we also decided to take sort of an iterative approach. We would set things up and we would do iterations to make things more scalable for the future. So a little bit about how we look at like waste reduction, and I like to look at this from a sort of a corrective action standpoint and preventive action standpoint. And regarding the corrective actions, there we're talking about surfacing the issues and making sure that they are addressed to prevent product waste. And preferably we want to know before it happens. For that we can look into split shipments, shipments at wrong locations, of course temperature excursions, shipments not picked up, border issues, etc. So we really needed to think, how could we utilize the streams of data and set up rules to surface this in an automatic manner and automate the communication and escalation for the correct stakeholders. So for the preventive actions, we looked there we're talking about how we can utilize all of the data flowing into this sort of single source of truth, where we can start to visualize the entire logistical network. We can start to look into trends, issues at certain points of interest, and then we can start to prioritize and make plans on how to address those. So that's more on the process side and figuring out issues in the logistics network, but we also utilize this to improve the technology, of course. So very quickly about the future applications we see. Of course, we learned a lot through this. This is a complex project. It's a global project, high scale. And looking at other applications, we can think about last mile deliveries, where scale is much greater than compared to primary distribution, for example. Also clinical trials and even on-site monitoring, where we can sort of aggregate this information, get the data flows, gaining the end-to-end visibility, and utilize a lot of automation to reach a higher scalability. There's also things happening in terms of just new development around locker site and all of that. We're seeing smaller components, more energy efficient, etc., which gives us new possibilities to reach an even more spread of solutions like this. So we, of course, have a lot of KPIs when we have such enriched set of data. And just sharing two of my favorite ones. One is around the average release time, and the other one is about around the success rate. So the average release time in this project is down to 20 minutes. And taking into consideration that some shipments need way longer time than that in some rare cases, the sort of majority of the shipments is way below, or not way below, but below 20 minutes. Then for the success rate, 99.997% success rate means that 99.997% of all of the vaccines that went from production to a point of use were delivered successfully and were able to use for vaccination. So 3 of the things that I find very important to reach this high level of success rate and release time, it's around automating the information gathering and focus a lot on that, because the level of automation and the level of insights that we can gain from the analytics and all of that, it relies so heavily on that we have a constant stream of data, that we have actually the data and we don't have gaps in it. So that is a key aspect to it. And then collaboration is needed, like I've said before. There are so many opportunities going forward to add to the automation and reduce even more waste throughout the network, and that all comes through collaboration. And then, of course, leveraging the process automation in the control tower approach to automate the workflows, communication, and all of that to make it possible to reach a high level of scalability. So this concludes my presentation. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you got some value out of it, and just thank you, and I hope you have a very nice day ahead of you.
Well, Erlingur, what a great presentation and really enjoyable video. Very informative, and I love the emphasis on the visuals. Really, really, really interesting. Now, some of the points that were emphasized again: collaboration needed, mapping out the workflow, automatic communications for high-scale global rollout, just to mention a few, but also the focus that you put on patient centricity, how important it is for the patient at the end of the day, and letting people know how much the supply chain cares, and the focus is incredible. Now, some of those points that can affect patient centricity that you covered are really interesting and would be great to talk with more detail in the future at some point. So I'm talking about the split shipments, temperature alert and alarms, shipments at wrong locations, product damage, suspected thefts, additional business rules, shipment not picked up, and also customs and border issues, all really, really major influencing factors. But I love the way you put it together, and also about the future application on what's needed. So thank you very, very much for a very interesting session.